Welcome to our session. We are going to get started here in about 30 seconds as soon as everyone is able to actually log on. I see people joining, so we'll give that just a few seconds and then we will jump right in. Thank you for being here. Okay, hello again and welcome. We are going to start our presentation this afternoon. This session is for new districts planning to apply for the teacher incentive allotment in April of 2026. My name is Teresa McGeehan. I will be the presenter for today. I've been on the TIA team since 2019. And mostly what I do for the team is really help support districts to develop valid and reliable systems for purposes of TIA. So all about the system planning and development phase is kind of what I do, and that's exactly what we'll be talking about today. Welcome and thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar. This webinar will be recorded. It will be saved in the district share file. We have a whole share file for districts that houses lots of previous webinars and will also house this one. So you can access this entire recording in just a little bit after the session ends. Just as a note, you will not appear in the recording. No faces will be in the recording. Just you'll see the slides and you'll hear the voiceover. In addition, during the webinar, there is no chat feature enabled. Instead, you can use Q&A feature if you have a question. We have some people from the team on this call as well who will be answering questions as we go. Some of the questions may be very specific to your district, and so for some of them, the answer might be go ahead and email the TIA inbox because that way it can get forwarded to the correct person on our team who would best be able to answer your question. But we will try as we go along to answer questions, and if there's time at the end, I will also open it up to any questions that you guys might have. Our objectives for this afternoon. First, I want to make sure everyone understands how to access the TIA system application in the online portal. There's an online TIA portal. That's where the application is housed, and we're going to go over that in just a little bit. Also want you guys to understand how to navigate that tab, various tabs within the portal. There's several tabs, and certain tabs unlock other tabs. So we'll go through all of that and how that works. And then finally, we want you to be able to access the resources we have. We have many resources out there for you to use in the hopes of you having the most successful possible local designation system for TIA in your district. So we will cover all of that. Our agenda, in addition to welcome and objectives, we will talk about the TIA impact across Texas, which is considerable. I'm very excited to share that in just a little bit. Then we'll go through portal access and the waiting tab. The waiting tab is a very, very important tab on the application because it kind of controls the rest of the application. We'll go through that. We'll also talk about additional tabs that are required, and then we'll end with resources and some next steps. So first of all, I want to start out by talking about the impact that TIA has had in Texas. So right now, in the 25-24 school year, in terms of payouts, over $481 million went out to districts. That amounts to over 42,000 designated teachers and 665 districts receiving funds. This is huge. That's real money going out to real campuses all over the state of Texas, and we're very, very happy for that. Next, in terms of number of schools, so when TIA started back in 2020, with the 2019-2020 school year, there were 35 districts involved in TIA. Now we have 809. Huge growth in just 5 years. We're very proud of that. That is over half of the districts in the state, 65%, and 475 of those districts are rural, which represents about 64% of our rural districts in the state are also involved in TIA, which was a goal from the very beginning. So we're really, really happy that we have so many districts involved. And with you guys applying in April, all of these numbers will increase next year, and you'll be able to say, oh, wow, that went up because of me. So very excited about that. In terms of other impact that TIA has had, one of the main goals of TIA is retention. There's basically three: recruit, retain, reward. Well, retain, it turns out, is actually working. So these teal colored bands right here in each graph represent designated teacher retention rates, and the orange represent non-designated teacher retention rates. And you can see that designated teachers have a higher retention rate than non-designated teachers. So in other words, TIA appears to be working, and we really are retaining our most effective teachers at higher rates, which is awesome. That's good for teachers, it's good for districts, it's good for everyone. So just wanted to share with you some of the impact that TIA has had in a relatively very short time in our state. So the components of a teacher TIA local designation system. There are two parts that are required, and then there's an optional component if you wish. So you have to have a system that includes a teacher observation component, and you have to have a system that includes a student growth component. You can have additional components in your system if you wish. You can include things like student surveys, things like that. Those are totally optional and up to you. In terms of timeline, some districts kind of started thinking about TIA and doing some pre-planning back in 24, 25 last school year. And then this year, year one, is their actual application year. If you did not start last year, that's totally okay. It's not a requirement. You can still go through the school year and be able to submit your application by April 15th. The due date is April 15th, and that's year one. Just at a glance, after you have your application accepted, and hopefully everyone's application will be accepted, you'll have strong systems. You then have a data capture year where you capture the data of the system that you built. So the teacher observation data and the student growth data that's in your system, you'll capture all that data for one full school year. That'd be year two. Year three, you submit that data. It then goes through processes for data validation, and you will find out at the end of that year if your system passed data validation or not. And then finally, every year after you're approved, you can always put in new and higher designations. You can always expand or modify every year. If year one you did one thing and you want to change it the next year, you can do that. We're not going to talk so much about all these other pieces. We're going to focus for today's purpose just on this year one, the 25-26 school year, when you're actually going to be developing and submitting your application. But just FYI, you have this deck and you can come back and look at it later for future reference on what's coming down the lane later on. In terms of pre-work, there's all kinds of pre-work you can do. There's many, many resources in this district TIA file. I mentioned that before. You have this deck. It also will be posted in ShareFile, this whole deck. This is a live link to the district ShareFile. It has lots of other webinars. There's like getting started with TIA. If you don't even know what TIA is, or you have people on your school board or teachers who need just a general, what even is it? This is a great getting started overview webinar. You can just push play and play at your next faculty meeting, for example. There's also several different webinars on student growth measures. I recommend you watch that to think about what growth measures you might want to include in year one versus in year two. Engaging stakeholders, there's great information on that. TIA shouldn't be a secret, right? We want stakeholders involved, informed, giving a chance to get input, things like that. That's another great webinar. And then there's another one on spending plan. How do you go about creating a spending plan? What does a good spending plan look like? What are some sample exemplars of spending plans, etc.? So recommend, if you haven't had a chance to check out these resources, that you go ahead and check those out as you build your system. So just really quickly, I'm going to do a quick poll and see who we've got in our Zoom today. How far along, as of right now, is your district in planning your TIA system? So it could be that today's webinar is the very first step and you haven't done anything else yet, all the way down to your district's ready to submit right now. So, and everything in between. So we're going to launch this poll. Take a second, let us know where your district is in respect to your TIA system design. See some answers coming in. Thank you. Keep them coming. I'll give you about 3 or 4 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and I'll show you what we got. It looks like we have a little bit of everything. We have a few people that this is their very first step. Welcome. There are no wrong answers here. And then we have a little bit of everything else. So that's good. We even have, it looks like, three people who are ready to submit their application right now. So maybe I should just stop talking and let y'all lead. That's wonderful. Good for you. Welcome to everyone. And thank you for taking the poll. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to access the portal. So like I mentioned before, the application is on what we call the TIA online portal. And to access that, it is already live right now. One person per district will have access, and access information was sent via email to your district's main contact. So whoever you listed as your TIA main contact for your district, that person got the email saying, here is your person who has access to the portal. Here's your password. Oh, before I move on, there's also an FAQ. This is a live link. When you get this deck, you're welcome to download it. And it's also on the TIA website about FAQs about how the portal works. So if you have any other questions about that, go ahead and check out the portal FAQ. Do you have to have a letter of intent on file to access the portal? Yes, that is true. Letter of intent or LOI, because that's how we know who you are. If we don't know who you are and we don't have your email address, then we can't send you the information to get your access code. So yes, you have to have a letter of intent on file. If you don't, then email us. That's tia@tea.texas.gov, and we will get your information down and send you your secure information. What if you don't know who your primary account holder is, or if that person left, you need to change it? In that case, just email again the TIA inbox, tia@tea.texas.gov, and we will get that sorted out for you. You do have to have access to the portal in order to complete the application. The application has several tabs that are statutory, and they have a few that are required but non-statutory. What's the difference, you might ask? Well, statutory tabs are required to have full readiness in order for your application to be accepted. And those tabs are what you see right here. The waiting tab, there's an eligible teachers and eligible campus tab, teacher observation tab, all applicable student growth measure tabs, and the spending tab. And by saying applicable student growth measure tabs, it means you have to complete the tabs of the student growth measures that your district is using. For example, if you're using portfolios and SLOs only and you're not using any pretest post-tests, you do not have to complete the pretest post-test tab, and vice versa. All of those have to be at full readiness in order to be accepted. We also have non-statutory tabs. They are required. So if your application does not have these, it will not be complete. But you could, in theory, have these not at full readiness and still have an accepted system. The reason why these are so important is that for a system to work, you really have to have a lot of input, a lot of stakeholder engagement. District information is how we contact you. And then the district support tab tells us how is your district going to support TIA once you get accepted? What's that going to look like? So those are all important tabs for you to know as well. And we'll be going into detail with all of these as we go through this presentation this afternoon. So we're going to take a tour of the online portal so you can see what it looks like. We're going to start with the general tab. So I'm going to take you to the portal right now. A word of caution, it tends to log you out very, very quickly, and that's okay. For example, I had this open before we started the presentation, or when we started the presentation, and it's logged me out, and that's okay. You just log yourself right back in. No big deal. That'll probably happen several times during this webinar, so don't worry about that. So here's the welcome page. When you first log on, you'll see the welcome page. Now, of course, in your case, it won't say Welcome Testing District 3. It will say Welcome your district name. But this will show you the Welcome tab gives you several pieces of information. It lets you know where you are in terms of the completion rate for all the tabs. So in this example, this district has finished their waiting tab. They're 100% complete on that. They've started their stakeholder engagement tab, and they've started their spending tab, but they're not complete. And they have not started any other tabs yet, which is totally fine. So that just tells you where you are. If you want to keep an eye on tracking how close you are to completion, this tab will do it for you. It also shows you on the side all the various tabs that are part of the application. So this is the Welcome tab. There is a reference file tab, which may not be as applicable to you except for the attestations. You do have to have attestations uploaded as part of the application. That's where you can find those. If your system, which does not apply to new districts, had previous systems of records, you can access them there. So next year, if you want to expand your system, you can find your this year's application already in there preloaded for you, so you don't have to hunt for it. So that will be of use to you later, although it's not relevant for you right now. Then we have the district info tab. Again, this is how we know who you are. Who are your contacts? Who is your technology person? Do you have a technical assistance provider? What's everyone's email address? This is very important because this is how we can contact you if we have a question or something's wrong, or if there's an update or there's a change to a rule or whatever. Really important that this information is accurate for you so we get you the information you need. And then there's an application dashboard, which is also helpful. It's another way of looking at that completion rate, but it just shows you certain things that are not only how you're completing, but which tabs you have to complete and which tabs you don't. So in this example, this district is not using student learning objectives, so that tab is locked. They're also not using value-added measures, so that tab is locked. They do want to use portfolios, so that's why it says 0. They need to complete it, they just haven't done it yet. And they do need to complete the pre-test post-test tab, but they haven't done that yet either, which is fine. So it just lets you know where you are, what you have to complete, and what you don't have to complete. So that's just a general view of the general tabs. Next up, we're going to talk about the weighting tab. So the weighting tab is very important. This is kind of like the nerve center of the entire application. It controls what you have to complete and what you don't have to complete. It unlocks other tabs and then keeps tabs locked that you don't need to complete and so forth. So it has all of this information on it. It has the teacher categories, which we'll talk about in a minute. That's a very specific definition. It tells what your teacher observation rubric is and how much you want to weight that in your system. It lists the student growth measures you're using and what weight you want those to be in your system. And it will list any optional components if you choose to use them and the weights that you will use for those. Some districts lately have been using student survey as an optional component. So this is an example of a student survey that you can use if you want to include an optional component in your system. Again, you don't have to. That's why it's optional. Teacher category definition. So we talked about that just a second ago. A teacher category can contain multiple teaching assignments. You can put as many different teaching assignments into one category as you want, as long as they have two things in common. One, they have to have the same teacher observation rubric at the same weight, say t-test at 50%, and it has to have this, they have to all have the same student growth measure at the same weight in order to be combined. So for example, they're all using SLOs at 50%. If it's using a pretest post-test, you can combine them only if they use the same pretest post-test. So let's say for first and second grade, for reading, you're using TPRI. First and second grade go together, even though first grade is different from second grade. If they're both using TPRI, they both go in the same category. So you can combine into the same category teaching assignments that use the same assessment at the same weight. And the other piece here is to be very specific when you list the names of your teaching assignments. So you want to say first and second grade reading and math, not just first grade, because we don't know what first grade means. Or you want to say, you want to name if you say core teachers, we don't know what core teachers is. Core teachers in one district might be just English and math. Core teachers in another might be things you have to graduate, which would include social studies and science. Core teachers you have to be specific. So you have to say we mean Algebra 1, English 2, biology, whatever it is that you mean. You need to say specifically what the name of the assignment is and then combine them according to this definition. So we're going to practice that right now. I know that's a lot. So here's a practice to hopefully this will illustrate what I was talking about. So here is a district's weighting tab. This particular district has 6 categories, everything from first through third grade reading, all the way through 6th through 8th grade science. This is a K through 8 district. They're using t-test as their teacher observation rubric, which they want to weigh at 60%. Notice they're using t-test for all of these assignments, all these categories, sorry, and they're all weighted at 60%. And then the assessment they're using is NWA MAP, and they're using that for all of these assignments, and they're weighting that at 60. Is this a correct way of doing a weighting tab? That's my question to you. And if you go back and you think about when you should combine if they have the same student growth measure, including the same assessment at the same weight, they can be combined. So is this correct? I'll give you a second just to think about it, and then I'll show you the answer. And then we're going to do one by poll. This is our practice round. Just think to yourself. You don't have to do anything. Just think about it. All right. So for those of you who said that this is not correct, you are correct. This is not a way. And this because all of these are using t-tests. All are rated at 60% for t-tests. All of them are using the same assessment. In this example, it's NWA MAP, and all of them are using that MAP test at 40%. So this district's weighting tab should actually look like this. They should be just one category because they're all of these teaching assignments together can be combined because they're all using t-tests at 60 and they're all using MAP at 40. So hopefully that helps to illustrate what we're talking about, what you can combine and what you can't combine. So now it's going to be your turn. How many teaching categories should this be for this district? Give you a chance to look at that. I'll give you a hint. It's not 6. How many should they have? So think about that definition. They can be combined if they have the same student growth measure at the same weight. They cannot be combined if they have different student growth measures. So think about that for a second. I'll give you like 30 seconds to read, and then we'll launch the poll and you can tell me what the answer is. These people are jumping in, taking the poll already. Great. Keep them coming. Okay, I'll give you guys about another 5 seconds if you hadn't had a chance to vote yet. And then we'll end the poll in just a minute. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Thank you for participating. Um, the vast majority of you, 91%, said the answer is 4. And if you said that, then you are correct. And here is why. These first 3 can all be combined because they're all using t-test at 60 and iReady at 40. Notice they're the same assessment. They should be combined. Then we have a group that's using STAR. That's the only one using STAR. Different assessment, different category. Then we have one that's using portfolio. Different student growth measure, different category. And we have one that's using SLOs. Different student growth measure, different category. So you should, in other words, combine what's combinable and don't combine things that can't be combined. So hopefully that is a good reference for you. I know this is a lot of information. That's why we're recording this. Hopefully you can go back to it later, share it with your team, and be really clear on how that definition of teacher category works so that your weighting tab is as successful as possible. One thing to note when you are using pre-tests and post-tests, some vendors include third-party growth targets and some vendors do not. So for example, the STAR test, you don't have to create your growth targets locally because you can use STAR progress measure, you can use transition tables, they have growth. NWA MAP has growth targets that they provide. Renaissance STAR, many of these, they have growth targets. But then there's also assessments that are perfectly valid and reliable to use, but they do not provide growth targets. You have to set your expected growth targets locally at the district level. So just be mindful of that when you are building your system. If you click an assessment, make sure you're aware that you know whether that assessment includes growth targets or not. Here are some examples of some commonly used assessments. On the left side, we have ones that set expected growth targets. These are just examples. STAR, like I mentioned, iReady, M-Class. Now this is interesting. M-Class provides growth targets, but only for reading, not for math. NWA MAP, Renaissance STAR, there's many others. And here's some commonly used exams that do not provide expected growth targets. So Circle and Circle K, Circle K, by the way, is a new name for TextKia, the kindergarten test. Um, Lots of districts use these, totally fine, but they do not provide growth targets. Those have to be set at the local level. AP exams is another great example. Lots of districts use AP exams for their AP teachers, but they have to set growth targets locally, and so on. And again, at the bottom, M class for math does not have growth targets, even though M class for reading does. Luckily, there's a hugely helpful list. It's called a third-party assessment options list. This link is live when you get this presentation. You can click on it, or you can go to the TIA website and click on it. It's there as well. And just see, it will tell you, here's the test. Does it provide growth targets or not? Very, very easy to use. Make sure you know what those look for. And so now we're going to go and look at the weighting tab in the portal itself. And I'm going to show you how the weighting tab unlocks other tabs. So let's go back to the portal, and it logged me out again. That's okay. I'm going to log right back in. There we go. Okay, so weighting tab. So here's an example of a district's weighting tab. They are going to be using 2nd through 8th grade reading and math, using t-tests at 40%. They're using MAP as a pretest. They're using third-party vendor growth targets. Who sets expected growth? The answer is MAP. And then their post-test is also MAP. So that's just an example. This district is also including English 1 and 2 and Algebra 1. For that one, they're using the previous year star, star progress measures, and end of year star as the post-test, and so on. They're using high school Spanish and French 1, Spanish 1 and French 1. They're using portfolios for that, and so on down the line. So this is where you put what you're doing. Notice how if you're using portfolios, you click portfolios and the weight, in this case it's 50%, the teacher observation rubric, which is 50%, and nothing else appears over here. But if you click pretest, post-test, now you have to answer more questions. You have to say, what is the name of the pretest? Who sets expected growth targets? And what is the name of the post-test? So when you click pretest, post-test, you're not done. You have to give us more information. That will really help everyone to know what exactly you're going to be using to determine teacher effectiveness. Again, this should not be a secret. Transparency about what the district plans to use and how you plan to define teacher effectiveness is all spelled out here on the weighting tab. So I just wanted to point that out. And notice how some of these other tabs are locked. This district is not using SLOs, not using VAM. They are using portfolios and pretest, post-test. So let's just say, for an example, we want to also use 10% of SLOs on this one. So I'm going to edit this one. I'm going to click SLOs, and I want that to be 10%. Notice I get a warning. Now I have 110%, can't do that. So I'm going to have to change my portfolios down to 40%. Now I'm back to 100%. And if I click save, notice how right now the SLO tab is locked. As soon as I click save here, the SLO tab is unlocked because now I've just said I'm using SLOs for my high school Spanish 1 and French teachers. So just wanted to demonstrate for you how whatever you put on the weighting tab determines what gets locked and what gets unlocked. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Let's go back to our presentation. So the next tab we're going to talk about is the Eligible Teachers tab. The Eligible Teachers tab is very closely connected to that weighting tab, and I will show you how. For one thing, all of the teacher categories that you put on the weighting tab will be pre-populated for you into the Eligible Teacher tab. The purpose of the Eligible Teacher tab is for you to select the service IDs that correspond to the teaching assignments in each category. So each category number, teacher category 1 was 2nd grade English or whatever it was, you've got to select the service ID that your district uses for 2nd grade English and attach it to category 1. So you know which service IDs are tied to which category. This is really, really helpful. And it also has filters that you can use to navigate between the different teacher categories. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So here we are back on Testing District 3, our old friend. I'm going to go to this Eligible Teachers tab. So notice how it already has all 5 of my categories. They're right here. 2nd through 8th grade reading and math, English 1 and 2 algebra, high school Spanish 1 and French 1, etc. So all of these are all right here for me. So the first thing I need to do is is find the service IDs that go with these descriptions. So let's start with second grade reading. So when you first open this, it has every service ID in the state of Texas. You do not want to have to scroll through all of that to find second grade reading, for example. So instead, you use this handy dandy little filters, and I'm going to put the subject description as English Language Arts. And since I'm trying to do second through eighth grade reading and math right up here, second through eighth grade reading and math, I'm going to click the grades, and I'm going to click second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seven, eight. Okay, so now I hit apply, and it's going to show me all of the service IDs that apply to second through eighth grade English Language Arts. Now, in this district, they don't teach English as a second language in their elementary school, so the first service IDs that come up are not the ones that my district uses, or this sample district uses. So I'm going to scroll down until I find English Language Arts and Reading Grade 2. That's what I use in my district, and that is Category 1. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to select Category 1. I'll do the same thing for third grade, and fourth grade, and fifth grade, and sixth grade, and seventh grade, and eighth grade. So now I can see all of these are tied to, all these service IDs over here are tied to Category 1. So then I save that. Don't forget to click Save, very important. Click Save. And now I can see what I have in Category 1. So just as a double check, I'm going to clear the filters, and I'm going to start over. I'm going to see, what do I have in Category 1? Let me go to Category 1. Apply, and there they are. English Language Arts and Readings 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I did it right. Yay! So you would do the same thing with math, because remember this Category 1 has second grade reading and math. So I'm not going to do this right now in real time, but what you would need to do is then clear these filters and start over and do the same thing for math. Click second through eighth grade, click math, and then select the service IDs that go with that. So you would do that for all of your teaching assignments. I'm going to go back to the Weighting tab and show you something else that you can do. So over here, you can notice these last two categories that this district used. They did first grade reading, T-test at 50%, iStation as the pre-test, post-test with iStation third-party targets. Great. Then they have first grade math, and it's the same thing, T-test at 50%, iStation, oh, sorry, this one is someone that they did that's something different. Look at this, they had iReady and iReady, but look at where their goal is at iStation. So in other words, this is not correct because you can't use iStation goals with iReady as a test. This was just a simple typo. If you make a typo, I'm just going to demonstrate this. No worries, just click edit. I'm going to say, well, obviously if I'm using iReady and iReady, I meant to say iReady, not iStation. So I just change it and hit save. And now I'm good to go. So now I can see that it all matches because that's what I'm actually using is iReady and not iStation. This was for reading, I'm using iStation. For math, I want to use iReady. So just wanted to point out that you could, this edit button here, you can use that. The eligible teacher tab, how to demonstrate using that. So that's just a basic introduction for how those two tabs are connected. Okay, there's also an eligible campuses tab. Now this one I can't show you in the portal because Testing District 3 doesn't have campuses, but your district will. It'll show all the campuses that are associated with your district. You get to select which campuses you want to include in your TIA system. Some districts include all of their campuses. Some districts include only some of their campuses, or they start small with a few campuses and build over time. That is up to you. Do make sure you check to make sure the full list of all campuses that are assigned to your district. In some cases, there may be a DAAP campus that's assigned to your district or a JJAP that you didn't realize or you didn't intend to include. So just make sure you include all the campuses you want to include. And then you have the option of not including any campuses that you don't want to include or that you're maybe not ready to include yet. So that's how the eligible campuses tab works. There's also a teacher observation tab. A teacher observation tab is where you tell us which rubric you're using. You have lots of options for rubrics that you can use to appraise teachers. Most districts use T-tests in the state. I think it's slightly over 90%, but there's also a lot of other options that you can use. And the questions on this tab are things not just identifying the rubric you use, but also what does your calibration look like? How do you look at data? How do you look at skew if your teacher observation data and your student growth data don't align? What do you do to address that skew? Those kinds of things. So you will answer questions about your appraisal process, how you calibrate your appraisers, how you look at data. All of those things are part of the teacher observation tab. Then you have the student growth tab. So like I mentioned before, you have four different options for student growth measures you can use for purposes of TIA. You can use student learning objectives, portfolios, pre-test, post-test, or VAM, value-added measures. You can use any of those. And there are lots of webinars about each of these on that district share file folder I showed you before. If you want more information about how SLOs work or what are the different options for pre-test, post-test, things like that, we already have great webinars out there for you already. Maybe you've already seen them, not sure. But if you haven't, you might want to take a look. Tabs, all of these tabs will unlock based on the weighting tab, like I demonstrated. If you're not using it, you do not have to complete it. If you did click you're using on the weighting tab, then it will unlock and then you have to complete it. So just make sure your weighting tab is accurate so that all the correct tabs will unlock. There's also a stakeholder engagement tab. The stakeholder engagement tab is one of those tabs that really talks about how to plan your system in a way that involved stakeholders in your district, teachers, campus leaders, district leaders. It's really important. Your TIA planning committee, how were those people selected? How do you inform teachers? How do you support teachers who want to earn a designation, who may not be ready yet or may not qualify yet, but they want to be able to be to qualify for a designation in, say, 2 years? What do you do to support them? Things like that. Regular communication updates. TIA should not be a secret. Everyone should know what the plan is and how you plan to evolve over time. So that stakeholder engagement tab gives you lots of questions so you can answer what you're doing so far in terms of your stakeholder engagement. Then we come to a spending tab. This is another one of those statutory tabs. So with spending, there's what we call a 90-10 rule. 90% of the allotment funds must be spent on teacher compensation. 10% can be, up to 10% can be spent on district support for TIA. And when we say district support for TIA, we need you to be specific. It can't just be admin support. That doesn't necessarily mean TIA. It would need to be something like, we are putting our 10% towards the cost of a TIA director in our district who can oversee the successful implementation and continuous improvement of our TIA system. Or we want to use the 10% to purchase a new assessment that we're going to use to include a teaching assignment that we don't currently have a valid assessment for. Things of that nature. Make sure you're specific when you explain what you're using the 10% for. There are also a lot of other information on the spending tab. I'm not going to go through all of this in this webinar because there's a whole other webinar just about spending, and I want you to take the time to read that. But you will have information about how do you determine what your spending plan is? What's your rationale? Who did you include? How does your school board know? Movement of teachers, really want you guys to think through this piece. What if a teacher moves, leaves the district, moves to Hawaii, whatever, before payout? What happens? Do you forward the funds to that teacher? Do you not forward that funds to the teacher? If you don't forward the funds, FYI, then you have to make sure those funds are still spent via that 90-10 spending rule. So that's those are the statutory pieces. And then there's also information about national board teachers and what happens if they generate a designation via national board versus earning a designation in your district. So all of that is part of the spending plan. These are the videos I mentioned, the webinars. If you want to have general information about how to create a spending plan, this is an excellent source for that. There's also spending plan guidance and even exemplar plans where you can see, oh, here's what this district is doing. Oh, that's what they're doing. These are exemplars of what spending plans look like. So all of those are available for you in the district share file. The last tab we're going to talk about is the district support tab. District support tab is also really important because TIA touches a lot of different aspects of your district. It touches your human resources people, it touches your central office, data systems, data monitoring systems, data submission. It has all the different parts, professional development services. It kind of has a lot of appeal across the whole district. And so the district support tab is asking you questions about how are you informing people what TIA is? How are you informing them in building it? what happens once the money comes? Does your payroll staff know about that? All the different aspects of district support, and that's what the district support tab is for. So you guys have a heads up about what's going to happen, and everyone is informed in your district about TIA ahead of time. So I know that's a lot. That's just a kind of a run through of all the tabs on the application, except one. We're going to talk about one more tab in just a second. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about the scoring rubric. So the scoring rubric is a tool that you can use. It's very, very helpful. Again, you'll have this deck. This is the live link. It's also on the TIA website. The scoring rubric tells you exactly what is needed for full readiness on any particular answer of the application. So if you wanted to see what do I need to make sure my answer includes, the scoring rubric has all of that information in there. You can use it in a sense to pre-score your application on your own before you submit it. And I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like. And this is just a screenshot of the weighting tab, but there are the scoring rubric for the pretest post-test tab, the teacher observation tab, spending tab, all of the tabs I just went through. There's a specific scoring rubric so you can see exactly what the scoring team will be looking for those respective tabs. So that is what it's for. It's really designed so that districts can sort of pre-score their own application before they submit it. It has really easy to use. It's just specific bullet points. It lists statutory components. It also includes best practices. Highly recommend you take a look at the scoring rubric. And we're going to practice using it just to show you a little bit, give you a taste, if you will, about how it works. So we're going to be looking at a district answer on the pretest post-test tab, option 1, question 1. And when I say option 1, you may be wondering, what is she talking about? Well, there are 4 different options for how you can use a pretest post-test. And again, there's a whole separate webinar about that. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that, but just in a nutshell, the first option is a third-party test, third-party pretest, third-party growth targets, and a third-party post-test like STAR, like MAP. The second option is a third-party pretest and a third-party post-test, but district-created growth targets like Circle and Texkia and AP exams and ICEV exams, etc. The third option is district-created pretest, district growth targets, and district post-test, so totally a district-created system. And then the fourth option is kind of a hybrid with a district-created pretest, but a third-party post-test. So you have all those options available to you. For today's purposes, we're just going to focus in on option 1. And again, that's the third-party pretest, third-party growth targets, third-party post-test. Question 1. So let's take a look. What the scoring rubric says, and I just literally cut and pasted this from the scoring rubric, it says you have to explain how each assessment aligns to the standards and the content covered in each respective course that you're listing that you're going to be using that assessment for, and that the district answers all assessments provided in that category. So if you're using 10 assessments, you have 10 different answers. If you're using one assessment, you have one answer. You need to make sure you provide answers for all of the assessments used in that category provided. So in this case, this district's option 1, again, that's the third-party pretest, third-party growth target, third-party post-test. They're using 3 that qualify as option 1. They're using Renaissance Star, they're using M-Class Reading, and they're using STAR. Here is their answer. I'm going to give you a minute to read that, at least 30 seconds, and then we'll post the poll in about 30 seconds so you can answer, is this correct? Would this meet full readiness or not? Look at what we're asking for over here on the left side. Look at what their answer is on the right side, and think about, would that meet full readiness or not? I'll give you about 20 seconds. The answer's coming in. Keep them coming. All right, we're going to end the poll. It's been about 20 seconds. Let's end the poll. I can show you the results. Looks like most people said no. That would not meet full readiness. If you selected no, you are correct. And I will show you why. This one's tricky because their answers are good. They explain why they're using Renaissance R and how it's aligned to the TEKS and why they're using STAR and transition tables. Those are great answers. However, they're using one, two, three assessments, and they only uh, answered for two. So they didn't include any information about M class reading. That would not be full readiness because they didn't fully answer the question. And this can happen. Sometimes you're typing an application, you're going fast, something happens, the phone rings, there's a fire drill, whatever, and you move on and you don't remember that you forgot to answer. This is why using that scoring rubric would be really, really helpful because you could see, oh my goodness, I left off M class. Not to worry, this district fixed it. They added in the information that was missing on M class reading. They added an answer. That's a good answer for why they chose M class reading. Now we can see they have three assessments, three answers. That's what we asked for. Answer questions for all assessments used, and they did. So this now would meet full readiness. This is just an example about how you can look at an answer you write, look at the scoring rubric, and for yourself, see, did you get it right or not? Sometimes things just get missed, and that's, we're human. But the good news is if you take this step and you go back and review it, you can fix all of the things before you ever even submit your application. Hopefully get as many of you accepted as soon as possible. I also want to say a quick word about planning for eligible teaching assignments. So not every district is ready to include every single teaching assignment in year one. So if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I couldn't possibly include everything, we're not ready yet, that's okay. Other districts, we are ready. We want to include everyone in year one. That's also great. If you want to plan, this is a great tool you might consider using and it explains a way for you to show what you're going to include in year one and what you want to include maybe in year two, year three, year four, so that you're planning. The idea is that eventually, say within 5 years, the goal will be to include all teachers as eligible in your district. Maybe you don't do that in year one, but we're hoping we want to set that goal that within 5 years, every district includes every single teaching assignment. So that's a lofty goal, but we wanted to put that out there. And here's an example of Maple ISD. Maple ISD is a K through 8 district. And they're already using TPRI with currently valid results. They're going to do that in year one. They're already using transition tables. They're going to do that. They already feel good about that. What they want to add, what they want to include in their application for next year, for 26-27, they want to switch from transition tables to VAM. So when they submit their application on April 15th, 2026, they're going to use fourth grade reading and math, but they're going to click VAM because they want to use VAM instead of transition tables. Even though right now they're using transition tables, they're going to switch. For K through third grade reading, they're going to click pre-test, post-test, and they're going to click that they're using the TPRI test. They also, all of these teaching assignments right here, social studies, world languages, science, and PE, they have been training this full year on SLOs. They wanted to pilot it. So they've been piloting SLOs to see how it works. They want to include these systems in 26-27. And then for their kindergarten music and art, they're not ready to include them yet. However, these teachers have decided that they want to use portfolios. So they're going to be exploring portfolios and they'll pilot them in 26-27, and then they'll add these subjects via an expansion modification in the 27-28 school year. So you can see this is what's going to be added. This is what's going to be added next. You could extend this table to 28-29, 29-30, just an idea as a sample for what you want to include when. That way every teacher can see, even if I'm not involved in the first year, there's a plan to get me involved and get me as eligible in TIA, and I can see what that plan might be. So this is just an option for your district to use as you think about planning to include all of your teaching assignments down the road. How might you start planning for that right now? So now we're going to talk about the very last tab. This is exciting. We have Lariah on our team who's going to be talking to you about the Enhanced TIA tab, which is brand new, hot off the presses. So I'm going to turn it over to Lariah.
Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate it. And good afternoon, everyone. I want to take a moment to introduce the new Enhanced TIA application tab that's been added to the portal. So currently, all users should see this as a lock tab in their left-hand menu. Um, as a reminder, Enhanced TIA is a new designation that's available to districts that have established a strategic compensation system that's based on performance. So this designation unlocks an additional 10% in TIA funds to support these strategic compensation systems. Now, as I mentioned, the Enhanced TIA tab is visible under the District Support tab in the portal, but is currently locked for all users. So if your district is not planning to pursue Enhanced TIA at this time, you can completely ignore this tab. It won't affect your application at all. If your district submitted a letter of intent for Enhanced TIA this fall, you'll gain access in early February. And please also keep in mind that this application is due April 15th as well. And then districts who submitted a letter of intent should also keep an eye out for our enhanced TIA application training session that'll take place on February 11th. Um, if you are wondering whether applying for enhanced TIA designation makes sense for your district, here's a visual that highlights the key criteria for an HB2 compliant strategic compensation system. It must include universal teacher eligibility for TIA designation, performance-based teacher and campus administrator compensation, no across-the-board salary increases, and strategic staffing that places highly effective teachers at high-needs campuses. If your district uses an HB2 compliant strategic compensation system or plans to implement one by the 2026-27 school year, then just email us at tia@tea.texas.gov for more information about enhanced TIA. And then finally, next slide. If you have, or if you want to learn more about building an HB2 compliant strategic compensation system, don't miss this upcoming webinar on January 28th that's being hosted by the Center for Strategic Compensation. With that being said, Teresa will go over resources and next steps, and I'll reply to any questions that are posed in the chat.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so we have a few resources and next steps we want to go over. Next step, finalize system planning. So TIA, the way it works in the application is you plan your system first, and then you complete the application. It's not the kind of application you can just start going in and typing if you don't already have a system planned. You need to be thinking about in your plans, what teaching assignments are you going to include? What student growth measures will you use for those teaching assignments that you choose to include in year one? What kind of spending plan do you want to have? Those planning pieces come first. Then once you have your plan solidified, then you can go ahead and enter all your information in the portal itself. It is important to make sure you can access the portal. So if for any reason you don't have access to the portal, do email the TIA inbox. Again, that's tia@tea.texas.gov, and we will make sure you get access to the portal. Then once you have access to the portal, make sure you complete all the required tabs that are required for your district. Again, what controls what's required versus not is the waiting tab. So make sure that you complete that waiting tab, and then it will unlock all the tabs that you need to complete. And finally, submitting the application. That's important. After all that work, don't forget to submit. You have to submit it. The deadline is April 15th, 2026 by 11:59 p.m. So that is a hard deadline. However, if you submit early, like let's say you got all your work done and you want to submit your application on, say, March 1st. And then comes April 1st and you realize, oh, you know, we're going to change something. We don't want to use that assessment anymore. We want to swap it out for a different assessment or whatever might happen. You can still make changes. You can go right back in there and edit your application as many times as you want before April 15th at 11:59 p.m. After that, you can't change it. That is your system. That's what will be scored. That's what you will implement if it's accepted in the next school year, in the 26-27 school year. So your system, as it is entered on April 15th, it will be the system that you use. But if you submit early, there's no penalty. You can go in and change things and tweak things as you want. That's totally a local decision. I do have a survey I'd like to give you just to get feedback. We give all kinds of district-facing webinars like this, and I would really love your feedback so we can get better and better at what we do, make sure we're doing more of what works and more of what is helpful. It takes just 2 minutes. We'll just put the link in the chat right now. If you could go ahead and take the time, it's like I say, it's only about 2 minutes. Would love to have that feedback. Definitely will use it. Can't wait to get it and read it. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to start on that. Make sure you unload it and can open it. And then I have one more slide for you with some additional exciting resources, but I want to give you time to at least log on to the survey and make sure you can access it first. So I'm going to pause just for a few moments and then we'll come back with resources for you. Hopefully by now you've gotten the link and you're into the survey. So while you go about completing that, I just wanted to go over some important resources that we have for you. So first of all, the regional ESCs have a lot of support. Every single ESC, all 20 of them, have staff dedicated specifically to help districts with TIA. So you may or may not know that, but they do, and they're awesome. So if you don't know who the TIA person is in your region, you can click on this link once you have this deck. It's also on the TIA website. It will tell you exactly who to contact in your region for support with TIA. And one of the things they can do for you, which is very exciting, is review your application prior to you submitting it. So if you want to have another pair of eyes before you submit, go ahead and get that to your ESC. They will review it for you and give you feedback that then you can get implement before you actually submit it on the portal. Word of caution there, if you do want that service, highly recommend it, but give them enough time. I would recommend by early March that you give them your application. That way they have time to give you feedback and you have time to implement the feedback all before April 15th. So an ESC receiving 100 applications at 10 p.m. on April 15th, likely they're not going to be able to give you any feedback. So give it to them a little early, but they will be able to give you feedback and hopefully that will be very, very helpful. There are also specialized hubs. So on top of all 20 ESCs already having TIA support, we in addition have specific ESCs that are hubs for certain topics. For example, there's a hub for SLOs and portfolios. So if your district is thinking about that, want to get your feet wet using those, you could reach out directly to the SLO portfolio hub. There's one dedicated to rural districts. There's one dedicated to data, housing data, building your data, looking at your data, and then there's one for stakeholder engagement. How do you really engage stakeholders in a way that makes sense for your district? So encourage you to use those as well. We also have office hours every month. This is a great opportunity to come and just ask questions. It's just is what it says it is. It's literally office hours. There's not a formal presentation. It's not a recorded webinar. It's just people come and ask questions. Many times people like to come and listen to what other districts have to ask questions and it gets their thinking spurred. So please do attend our office hour sessions. We have our whole team there ready to answer whatever questions you might have across a variety of different topics. And finally, we have the specific resources, some of which we've already covered in this webinar. We have the scoring rubric. I demonstrated how to use that. Highly recommend you use that. We have exemplar answers. We did touch on that specifically in this webinar, but that is a link and you can find what does an exemplar answer look like for the teacher observation tab, part D, question 1. And there it is. There's exemplar answers for all of the questions that can really spur your thinking and get you have a visual for what a good answer looks like, an exemplar answer even, on all the different questions of the application. And finally, we have that planning for teacher assignments, planning to include all of your teachers over time. That document you can use as just a planning document. It's not required. You don't turn it in. It's just a really great way for teachers to see where they're going to fit in the system down the road. So recommend that you use that as well. Please do take that survey if you haven't yet. The link's in the chat. I will pour over that feedback and hopefully be able to give you guys more of what worked in our future webinars. With that, that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much for attending, for spending an hour with us. Hopefully this was helpful to you. I'm going to take a peek at the question and answer. If there's any remaining questions, I don't see any at the moment. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck to everyone. If you have any questions, please let us know. We are here to help. That's our job. We want all of you to be as successful as possible. So again, take the survey and thank you so much.